Shalom everyone, and welcome to our special course, Kabbalah Level 2, Reincarnations and the Personal Correction. The course is not built just because it is an interesting topic to learn about all kinds of mystical ideas, weird, scary, about past lives, death, and stuff like this. The purpose of this course is, as it says, reincarnations and the personal correction, which means how do we, human beings, build ourselves a schedule, a pattern, a working habit, how to correct our own negativities, how to expand to the utmost capacities that we were created for. And basically, this is what this course is going to discuss. So as we said, we're going to learn all kinds of habits, all kinds of ideas of how to take our lives and make them more productive. So we are going to discuss all of these issues connected to the most practical issues in our daily life, like relationships, dealing with emotions, soulmates issues, business issues, health issues, everything that really is practical and dealing with our daily life, because there's nothing in our lives that is mundane. Everything that happens to us has a reason and a purpose, and if we know how to put it in the right context, we can turn a lot of stuff that is kind of a burden into tools for spiritual growth. That's the purpose of this course. And as I said, the purpose is to get ourselves into a mode of spiritual hard working. So after the course, we have new habits, new tools to deal with the basic issues of life. So the course is very practical. We're not going to talk so much on mystical ideas that have nothing to do with our daily needs. So that is the purpose of the course. But before that, let us start with the idea of reincarnation at all. Most people do not remember their past lives. And because of that, we can say that in the common society, people don't really speak about reincarnations on a daily basis. They don't even give a thought to it on a daily basis. And if somebody talks about it, it can make you feel really uncomfortable sometimes, because people frown upon it. Why are you bringing that? And we will discuss this issue. But first of all, in order to realize what is the concept of reincarnation from a logical point of view, and because we live in the age of reason and information, so let's go to science. What does science has to say about reincarnation? And remember that science, there are a lot of scientific ideas that have, somebody printed a book about it, a scientist, about a half-lifetime of scientific ideas. So although scientists are trying to look at reincarnations as mystical, unfounded ideas from the primitive past of humanity, so when you talk to a scientist or a psychologist about reincarnation, they usually don't like to go into that area, most of them. But we have scientific research about it, and we'll take two angles that basically are not a few decades old, mostly from the second half of the 20th century. So let's go into that, and from that we'll expand to the whole idea of reincarnation. So we're starting with Professor Ian Stevenson, He's the biggest in the field. And he did something that most scientists don't do. He researched the idea of reincarnation from a point of view of the phenomena that you can find around the world today. Usually this is not spoken about too much, but there's a phenomena, and the idea is like this. The study that he was the head of it was a study of 3,000 cases around the world of memories from past lives in children. Give an example. It's like a child grows up in a certain household in a modern society. We were looking about Stevenson. He just passed away in 2007, and the child started to say things like, I used to live in another place. I used to have another name. My father and my mother are not my father and my mother because I had other father and mother, and so on. Now, in our society, in the Western society, usually when a child speaks like this, the reaction of the parents make the child to realize they're not comfortable with the idea. And children, after they start, maybe they start when they're really young, but they don't continue. Most of them do not. But in some societies, like in India, in which reincarnation is part of their, not just religion, in their culture. This is part of the culture. So in some cases, the parents are not getting upset about the child talking about it, they just get interested. It's like, so where do you live? What did you do? What kind of a person you've been? And stuff like this. And the children start to talk and to explain. And this is very interesting. What happened is that Professor Stevenson took 3,000 cases from around the world. I think that most of them were from India. But in these cases, the children had very detailed information about their past lives, enough details so they could verify if the story is really valid. Stevenson, I think, he never took stories of children older than 5, because maybe they heard about it somewhere else. But really, like around 3, 4, 5 years old, that you can't think that they can invent a story that complicated. And the point was like to take the story and try to find, was there really a person by that name living in the place that the child was describing? And I remember a story from my own childhood, that in Israel you have a society like this. It's called the Druze, D-R-U-Z-E. The Druze are a secret sect. There are about 1 million of them in the Middle East, more than 1 million. There are a few 100,000 of them in Israel. And they really, their main belief system is a secret. The wise men of their religion are not telling the stories of the wisdom of their religion only to chosen ones, but in their community, reincarnation is something so common that they just simply talk about it very openly inside the society. They live, most of them, in Israel, in the northern part of Israel, in the Carmel mountain and in the Galilee and the Golan Heights. Most of them live in their own villages. So it's a very close society, and it's very common that once in a while it comes to the newspapers, a story like, and I remember the story when I read it in the newspapers when I was younger, that the child, like 3, 4 years old, is telling his parents, "You're not my parents. I belong to another family. I live in another village. And so the parents are like, instead of being kind of upset about it, they say, okay, so where did you live? Do you remember the village? You remember the family? He said, take me to this village, and he gives them the name of the village. And so they take him to the village, and he leads them in the village, and they come to a house, and they knock on the door, and the widow opens the door, and he says, that was my wife. So what's special about it? The story was published. It will happen, I think it was early 80s in Israel. At that time, there was a very high inflation rate in Israel. So it was illegal, but people, how did they save? They bought dollars. It was not legal at that time to own dollars or foreign currency by yourself without a special permit. But people were buying in the black market dollars and saving it. And many times they will hide it under the tiles, under one tile that can be taken out. And that was a thing. So the story in our story, the person was in his 30s when he died from an accident. And the family did not know where did he hide the family savings. And the child showed the widow that tile. He said, under this tile, and they took the tile and they found the box with the savings of the family. So stories like this are very common in the Jewish community in Israel. And as I said, Stevenson found around the world 3,000 cases like this, that the story of the child could be verified by fitting it to a person that the details were exactly the same. Now, 3,000 cases, this is a lot, okay? Which means how otherwise you're going to explain that a child of 3-4 years old knows about somebody he never seen, never heard of, and he can tell by details stories about their life, okay? Another thing that he did that's also pretty famous is his research. I didn't see that in Kabbalistic writings, but he investigated 200 cases of birthmarks that were related to the form of death in a previous life. When I was many years ago, I heard a story like this from someone that was studying Kabbalah, and in their family there was a child that he had a problem. One of his muscles in his neck was not functioning properly. And when somebody was trying to find out the cause, they realized that that child was named after a person that died in the Holocaust, and that person was shot in the neck, and the place the bullet hit the neck, this is exactly the place of the muscle that didn't function. So this is another research that Stevenson was into it, but there's a kind of a strong connection between past life and this life, and we'll ask later on, so if there are proofs for that, how come most people don't remember their past lives? But we'll ask that question later on. Another aspect of that is one of the best-selling books of the 70s, 80s. It's called Life After Life by Raymond Moody. Dr. Raymond Moody, born 1944, so that's also really the late 20th century. And Raymond Moody is a teacher, a doctor of literature. And students came to him, few students came to him with stories of what is called today near-death experience, which means during an accident, surgery, The person experienced an out-of-body experience, which means the person experiencing leaving his or her body, traveling outside, usually through a tunnel, meeting the light, meeting God, different ways, and then being told that it's not your time, go back. And then they come back to their body and they wake up later on. So Moody never heard about that stuff, and he realized that those people who told him that story never heard about that story any place else. So as a literature professor, Moody started to collect those stories. He collected a lot of stories, I think up to 100, and he compared them as a literature researcher about what are the repeating elements that you can find in most of the stories, which means that first of all, the experience that my consciousness, my awareness as me, that can exist even when I'm not within a physical body. Okay, this is very important. A lot of people saw a tunnel, a dark tunnel with light in the end of the tunnel and flying through that tunnel, and then meeting, a lot of people spoke about meeting this endless light full of love, and then realizing in shame that we were here on earth just for that purpose, to reveal that light. And sometimes some of them were heard the question, what did you bring me to show? And then you realize that all your life, when you're running after pride, ownership of stuff, achievements, well, the achievements in this world is to achieve grace, positivity, turning dark into light and stuff like this. So it's a very interesting, this book was a best-selling book, 13 million copies. I can bring my own story. This is a story from almost 40 years ago. I was giving a lecture about reincarnations in Jerusalem. And there was a bunch of young people, young guys, who came to mock me. I realized that after a few minutes, they started to laugh and to mock and to joke, and there was no way I could continue giving the class. And I was simply like helpless. It's the only time I had something like this happening in my career as a teacher. And I'm like, please God, what I'm going to do? And in the class, there was a lady on a wheelchair. It's a true story. And she raises her hand and she asks, can I say something? And for me, it was, okay, come and save me, help me. And she said, I want to tell my story. You see my position, I'm right now in a wheelchair. I want to tell you how it happened. So this lady is saying, one day I'm walking down the street to one of the main streets of Jerusalem, and there was a bomb in a trash can, a public trash can, and I was next to that can, and within a split second, I find myself hovering over my crushed body. The body is lying there bleeding on the pavement, and I'm hovering a few meters above, watching it from above. And she says, this is so weird. I can see, but I don't have eyes. I can hear, I don't have ears. I'm thinking, I don't have a brain. How could that happen? And people are running around, screaming, yelling. And I feel so calm, so serene, so safe. Nothing bothers me. I look at them and I'm like, what's your problem? And she said, from that point of view, I look at life and life looks like a crazy hallucination. What are you yelling about? What happened? Nothing. And I'm not scared. I'm not upset. I see my body like crushed, but I have no problem with that. And she says another thing, you don't have a sense of time outside your body. And then I look at all my life and I say, like, what's the story? Why being so upset about such insignificant issues? People really making a horror story out of their lives. And she says, I can't tell you how long did it happen because there's no sense of time. And then I hear, and she says, remember, I don't have ears, but I hear a voice saying, do you want to move on or do you want to go back? And she says, my immediate reaction is, why do you have to make a decision? What's wrong with the way I am right now? I'm so perfectly calm and okay. And then she says, I don't know how long did that take because there's no sense of time. And then I realize I have a husband and 3 children. There's no way I'm going to give up on them. And the moment I realized that, and I wanted with all my might to be back, I found myself back into my body, aching, painful, and so on. And she says, you know what's the worst of it? I can't complain to anyone. Look, I'm in a wheelchair and I can't complain. I could choose moving on. I chose to be here. I saw my body the way it is. And I chose to come back anyway, to be in a wheelchair, but still to have my children and my husband, and that's my choice. From that moment on, the boys were really quiet, and I could continue with my lecture about reincarnations. So that's my own take. A lot of scientists were really hurt by Moody's discovery, because a lot of people who do have those out-of-body experience, we're talking about there are like huge amount of events like this yearly on planet Earth. So a lot of scientists were trying to no, this is just because the brain does not have oxygen, and therefore this is kind of a reaction to the lack of oxygen. You're just trying to get away and run away from the issue that the human soul can exist even if it's not in a body. Just lately there were a lot of scientific publications about the research about people, like the story that I told before, but people who were out of the body and they report about things that happen in the surgery room. There's no way they were capable of seeing. So it looks like this issue is still coming to the surface every few years, because you cannot just say this is just a reaction. I also had a student of mine that she told me about her mother. Her mother was blind for about 20 years, and then she had a surgery, nothing to do with the eyes, and she had a near-death experience on the surgery table. They brought her back, and when she was recovering, she is telling her daughter about the surgeon, how what a beautiful looking man was he, with blue eyes and he's blonde. And the daughter is telling me, ask him, Mom, but you are blind and you also were dead and you are under anesthesia. How could you see him? She said, I left my body and I saw them all. I saw them how they got panicked when I died, and they tried, and she told exactly the procedure that they had in the surgery room to save her till they brought her back. So these ideas, they kind of it's not just a matter of the lack of oxygen, because if they were under anesthesia and they were brain dead, how could they tell exactly what happened in the surgery room when that was happening? So there are many stories like this, and if you don't want to believe in it, forget it. But that brings us to the more important issue in our class, and that is the idea that if we are talking about it nowadays, We have to realize that along human history, there were millions and millions and millions of cases like this in every culture, every civilization. And it's inevitable that people spoke about it. And if people spoke about it, it was part of the culture. And if you go around the world and do a research about, how common is the belief in reincarnation, it's only second to the belief of God, in God. So if we go around the world and we check, you can see, as we said in India, this is a very common. Everybody knows about reincarnation. They don't believe in it. They know about it. If we go to very big part of the Far East, like China, where the worship of the elders of the family is very, very strong. Or you go to Japan, or like other countries all over Southeast Asia, this is like we have a very big percentage of the population that does see reincarnation as part of reality. You go to Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, about 98%, I'm talking about numbers of different polls, 98%, that's a pure research from a few years ago, 98% of the population do believe in reincarnation. Just a second, most of them are Christians or Muslims. How come? The answer is yes, they declare themselves as Christians and Muslims, but they believe in reincarnation. Same thing, big parts of South America and Central America. So somebody did a summary that over 60% of people on Earth do believe in reincarnation. And why? As we said, you can't avoid that unless you are not allowed to speak about it. Why shouldn't you? There are two religions, Christianity and Islam, that do not allow to believe in reincarnation. And therefore, because those religions control very big parts of the world, so in wherever Christianity and Islam are in control, in that culture, you don't usually speak about it in public. In the Western world, since let's say since the 60s, when common religion, especially Christianity, is not strong enough in the public space, the public domain, there are more and more stories, movies, and so on about reincarnation, and more people do go into that back again because the control of religion is not as strong as it used to be. So as we said, we have Hinduism and Buddhism. They believe in the samsara, which is their system of reincarnations, coming again and again, paying your karmic debt. In the Shinto in Japan, the shamanism in many places around the world that also is into reincarnation. South and Central American religions, Sub-Saharan Africa, and the Druze that I spoke about before. This is like the majority of the world's population that's this way or another do believe in reincarnation. And as I said, either because this is the tradition of that society, or because being exposed to stories that happen to your dear ones or to yourself, or simply because culturally this idea is going around a lot. Now, what about Judaism? So in Judaism, we have a lot of reincarnations. You just have to remember that most Jews lived in Islamic or Christian countries in which you had an upper on being Jewish, not just to speak about something that is totally not allowed to speak about in public. So Jews preferred not to speak about it in public, and that was hidden and suppressed so much that most of Jews don't even remember that there is a lot of it in Judaism. So first of all, let's ask the question, if reincarnation is a very important pillar of understanding human life, it should be in the Bible. So let's go into that discussion in the Bible. Where can we find reincarnation in the Bible itself? And that's very clear. The peak story of the whole Bible is Mount Sinai revelation. We go to the book of Exodus, the story of the revelation of what is known by mistake, the 10 Commandments, what is known according in Hebrew, it says the 10 utterances. And it says there in Exodus 20, verses 5 and 6, punishing the children for the sin of the parents to the 3rd and 4th generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me. Or in Hebrew, פוקד עוון אבות על בנים, על שילשים ועל רבעים לשונאי, ועושה חסד לאלפים לאוהבי ולשומרי מצוותיי. This is a very clear verse that, if you read it simply, it's very upsetting. Why should I pay for something my great-grandfather did? I never met him. I don't know him. How can some of us don't even know their names. So why should I pay for someone I didn't know? This sounds really upsetting if you're really going to understanding the verse. But on the other hand, if you know the Bible properly, you go to Deuteronomy 24:16, לא יומתו אבות על בנים ובנים לא יומתו על אבות, איש ואיש בחטאו יומתו. It says very clearly, parents are not going to be put to death for their children, nor children put to death for their parents. Each will die for their own sin. Like, it's impossible that there will be in the 5 books of Moses 2 verses totally opposite to each other. And there's an addition. We go to the book of Ezekiel, chapter 18, verses 2 and 4, where it says that the prophet Ezekiel is saying, what does it mean that you keep quoting this proverb in the land of Israel? When parents eat sour grapes, their children's teeth are set on edge, which means the children are paying for the sins of the fathers. It's in a different way. And he continues, and he says, what does it mean that you keep quoting this proverb? Now the children do not have to pay for the sins of the fathers. Verse 4, look, all lives belong to me. Both the parent's life and the child's life are equally mine. So it is the person who sins himself who must die. Again, Ezekiel says people misunderstood those verses in the story of the Mount Sinai revelation and on the 2 tablets, and they still were talking about paying for the sins of the parents. It says, no way. Every person will pay only for his own sins. So in order to help us, the Zohar, the Holy Zohar, Parashat Itor, verse 518, in a Sulam commentary, and he says, speaking about these verses exactly, the Zohar is aware of the contradiction and the misunderstanding that can come out of it, and he says these verses relate to one tree, that is one soul, planted once and 2 times and 3 times and 4 times, which means like you can take a tree, uproot it and plant it in another orchard, and then you can move it again and again and again. The same happens with the soul. That soul is reincarnated and came in 4 bodies. The fathers, the sons, the 3rd and the 4th generation. That's what the Torah is saying on the 2 tablets. And that is what about early sins of the 4th incarnation, because a father and a 3rd and a 4th son, that is, these 4 incarnations are one. It's the same soul, one soul, that they are one soul who did not correct its sins and is punished for the 1st incarnations, which means Like the Zohar says in many places. I remember also some Druze sages are saying the body is only a dress. It's a piece of clothing. You change piece of clothing and you don't change your identity. It's the same you, although you change from a suit to a jogging clothes or something like this. But it's the same you. Okay, so because it's the same you still owe for the damage you brought. And because you owe, you have that is hanging there till you pay your debt away. And that can take 1, 2, 3, 4 incarnations. And vice versa, a tree that is properly corrected during the time of the incarnation and is well developed, it is written about it, showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me. If a person is correcting, improving, doing what's right, and managing to improve during his lifetime, that is being remembered for another incarnation, which means we learn over there are certain aspects of our life that when we create them, whatever we create, there are certain aspects that we see as gaining, as achievements, that they stay forever, for 1,000 generations with us. There are other things that don't stay with us, like possessions. What people call real estate is really fake estate. You cannot take your real estate to your next life. This is a very fake idea that you can it's real estate. It's not real estate. It's fake. It's yours till you die. Somebody. They used to say in America that when Howard Hughes died, was one of the first great billionaires. How much did he leave? And the answer is he left it all. He didn't take anything with him. You cannot take money with you for your life, next life. They were a caste of people, they called them Pharaoh, that they really got the whole country GDP into guaranteeing they can take as much as possible for their next life. And those pharaohs, where are they now? In the museum, in the traveling show. They don't have the right to rest in peace because they took so much and they thought they can have it forever. And now their bodies are not resting in peace. They're in a traveling show from one museum to another, because they have to pay probably their debt to society. So that's, if you really look at history, real estate, we're going to learn what's real estate, but it's not those things that you can write on your name when you buy property. So the most important source of knowledge about reincarnation in Judaism, the earliest source is the Zohar in Parashat Mishpatim. Parashat Mishpatim in the book of Exodus is the source of Hebrew law. Even the word Mishpatim means law. When you live in Israel, you go in to study law, it's called Mishpatim. School of law, you're going to study Mishpatim. Okay, that's a very simple word. However, says the Zohar, פתח רבי שמעון ואמר, ואל המשפטים אשר תשים לפניהם תרגום, ואילן דיניה דצדר קדמהון, אילן אינון סידורין דגלגולה, דינין דנשמתין דידנו כל אחד ואחד לקבל עונשי. English, that's Zohar Mishpatim in Perush HaSulam, in a Sulam commentary, verse 1. Rabbi Shimon opened and said, and these are the laws that you will put before them. These are the orders of reincarnation, because laws means judgments. That is, judgments of souls who return and reincarnate to the world and are each and every one judged according to its punishment. And what basically the Zohar is saying, that those laws that are being that are described in Parashat Mishpatim And basically, this is the source, a big part of the Talmud, by the way. All the laws of social issues of property, damages, and stuff like this. It's not just about the laws of society and how do you buy and sell, get married, buying property, and also how do you compensate somebody that was damaged by your actions. It's about that if you do not do it right, it will go on to the next life and next life till you're going to pay your debt. So all of that stuff that they are being dealt in court in the Hebrew ancient law, it's not, the purpose is not to get even with the criminal or whatever, but to make sure that the offender compensated the victim, so the offender, the victim, do not have to come in the next lifetime because it didn't fix it. Give you a few examples. We'll give you the examples later on. We're going to go to the story corner. Then we continue Rabbi Shimon's words. The first law appearing in Parashat Mishpatim, כי תקנה עבד עברי 6 שנים יעבוד ובשביעית יצא לחופשי חינם. When you buy a Hebrew slave, he will work for you 6 years, and on the 7th, he will go to freedom for free, which means he doesn't have to pay for it. Rabbi Shimon said to them, friends, this is the time to discover some hidden secrets of reincarnation. For you will buy a Hebrew slave for 6 years, he will serve. That's a verse we just quoted. That is, when the soul commits itself to reincarnation, or because of sins, or has not completed the Torah and mitzvot in its life, the soul is obliged to return to this world and dress herself in the body. You see, again, the looking at the body is just a dress, piece of clothing. They come and go, but you're staying the same person. That is to return to birth and complete 70 years of living in this world. In the ancient times, like a human cycle was 70 years. People's life expectancy was, if you lived 70 years, that was quite good. So what is the Zohar talking about? There are two reasons for the soul to incarnate. One, damage, sins. You damage, and there's a whole description of all kinds of damages you damage. Two, if you damage another person, basically the damage you create for others comes back and hits and damages your soul. And therefore you have to come another lifetime to cleanse that damage. That's one reason to come back. Another reason is, the more important reason, the human soul incarnates to a physical body because we have a calling. We need to receive enlightenment. The enlightenment we received in the moment of the creation. As we go back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 5, and there was a night, there was a day, one day, and the Zohar explains to us on that moment the whole creation was already completed. All the souls were already created, and they were totally fulfilled with the light of the Creator. Everything, there was a night, the creation, there was a day, the Creator, one day. It was all one in perfect harmony. However, because the Creator, as it's hinted later on in the same chapter, we were created in His image. And when we're talking about an image, we're talking about the mental image. And we were created in the image of the Creator. Therefore, when we learn about it, we learn that three aspects of the image of the Creator. What does it mean, an image of the Creator? The first one, that is easier to explain, the Creator is independent. Nobody can affect the Creator's mood or feelings. His endless positivity, and that is infinite, above time and above unrelated to our behavior. So when we humans in this physical world, when we want to achieve completion, if we are not independent, which means when we are addicted to what other people say, we're addicted to how much money we have, we're addicted to all kinds of materials, like to be happy, I need some alcohol. To be excited, I need some drugs. To be excited, I need to travel in very luxury hotels and stuff like this. That's my need. That's an addiction. It's saying you're not independent. Your happiness is dependent. You have dependencies. Overcoming independencies, that's part of our tikkun. We are here in this physical body to learn to become enlightened and happy unconditionally to external events. And therefore, people who have dependencies, they cannot be happy. The other aspect, there are three aspects, as I said. The second aspect is creativity. The creator is creative, very creative, if you look at his creation. Lazy people who wait and wait, they can go on waiting. You cannot become happy if you're not really creative and excited about it. So you have to basically learn how to do that. And the third is about giving. The creator is the great giver. And I never met happy, selfish people. You need to learn how to be a great giver in order to achieve the image of the creator, and that will bring you a great, eternal, true, lasting fulfillment. And that's the purpose. So the Torah and the mitzvot that Zohar is speaking about, this is the journey of achieving real, true happiness that is unconditional to outside events. When we reach that place, that's when our tikkun is completed. Tikkun means the correction. Okay, so in order to see that in Jewish history, you can see there are a lot of stories that in Jewish tradition that were passing down from generation to generation. However, as I said before, it was not spoken about outside because the outside society was not very excited about this kind of information. But if you go to, there are so many tales in the Zohar, if you go to some of the most famous ones, one of the most famous one is the story of Pinchas. Pinchas was a grandson of Aaron the high priest. During the story of Balaam and Bilam and Balak, whoever knows it, in the book of Numbers, Parashat Balak. And it says over there about Bilam, who came to curse the Israelite nation. He could not. They were really protected. So he told Balak, the king of Moab, a neighboring nation state of that time, just on the eastern bank of the Dead Sea. The Moabites were really scared of the Israelites. And so Balaam is saying you cannot curse those people. The only way to destroy them is from within. Divide them. Buy them. So the nation of Moab and their allies, the Midianites, took their most beautiful daughters, which means the princes, which means the daughters of those leaders, and sent them to the camp of Israel to seduce them for sexual acts and for idol worshiping. And they managed to seduce many Israelites, and a plague started and thousands of people were dying because of the plague, and nobody knew what to do. Only Pinchas knew exactly what to do. There were Zimri and Cosby Zimri was one of the heads of the tribe of Shimon, and Cosby was a princess of Midian. And as their In the middle of the act, Pinchas came with a spear and he killed both of them in the same shot. After that, immediately the plague stopped, the Israelites were saved, everything came back into place, and normality came back to life. Pinchas, in the next parasha, that is named after him, Parashat Pinchas, is being awarded by God to be a priest, a high priest for him and his offsprings, and he promises him peace and life for eternity. Pinchas, the Talmud is teaching us, never died. He lived for centuries. He was so divine that finally people stopped calling him Pinchas and they started to call him Elijah. Eliyahu, a Navi, Elijah the prophet. We know that Elijah never died. He went up to heaven in a chariot of fire, and he's still coming to visit us. So this is the story of Pinchas. And the question is, how did that happen? Because according to the laws of the Torah, a priest that killed cannot be a priest anymore. No matter how justified the killing was, a priest is a vehicle for grace, and killing is judgment. Yes, the judgment saved the nation, but it's against the law. So the Zohar is explaining that when Pinchas killed Shimon and Cosbi, he was sure he's not going to live. Why? Because the people of the tribe of Shimon were very, very loyal unto each other and very violent. He knew they're going to kill him. So the moment he killed Cosbi and Zimri, he simply took off. He did it with total devotion of really giving his life away. And he said, if it's my time to go, he left. He had a clinical death. The Zohar says he had two uncles that died 38 years earlier. They were the highest souls that ever incarnated on earth, Nadav ve'Avihu. They died because they offered incense in the tabernacle, and they were not supposed to. They simply got so high that they simply evaporated. They had to come back again, and they came back because of the devotion of Pinchas that connected to them, and their two souls came into Pinchas. Now Pinchas was alive, his soul came back. Now there were three souls in one body, Nadav, Avihu, and Pinchas. They continued to live like this and to lead the nation of Israel for centuries. I think it was around at least 700 years, or 600 years till Elijah the prophet went up to heaven. Just before Elijah, if you read the book of Kings, just before Elijah goes to heaven, his heir and student Elisha is next to him, and Elijah says, if you see me going up to heaven in a chariot of fire, make a wish, and your wish will be granted. And Elisha says, Vihina pi shnayim meruchacha alai. I want your double spirits, twice your spirit to me. What does it mean? That he wanted prophecy doubled than Elijah the prophet? Elisha was not, he could resurrect the dead like Elijah, but he didn't go up to heaven in a chariot of fire. So the sages are saying the word na, it means please, but it also initials of Nadav Avihu. Elisha simply said, if you leave, the two souls of Nadav and Avihu that you have, give them to me. Pass them to me, because I want that power of Nadav and Avihu. It was granted that power. So that's one tale of the Zohar. In the writings of the Ari, Rabbi Azakloria, there's a whole array of stories about reincarnations, amazing stories. A lot of people who lived at that time in Tzfat wrote the stories. You can find many books today that are based on those stories of people who are witnessing these stories. We can simply take few stories as an example. One story that is about, it helps us about learning something about business. A story I like is about a young guy who was a blacksmith, was not really from a very high-ranking family, and he comes to Rabbi Zakluri and says, there's a weird story. A rich man with a very beautiful daughter came to me and offered his daughter to me as a wife. Should I go? Well, what do you think? I don't know how would that work together. And the Ari says, you should go, marry her, enjoy it. When it's over, come to me, I'll help you with it. 9 months later, the guy comes back and he says, I married her. What a lovely woman. She was so beautiful. She was so loving. She made sure I'm in heaven for 9 months, and then suddenly she died, a sudden death. And now a father wants the dowry back. He wants the house back. He wants all the money he gave us back, because he said, I gave it for my daughter, not for you. So I don't know what to do. So the Arizal is saying, bring him over. He brings his father-in-law, and the Arizal is saying, look, I want to explain both of you what happened over here. The guy standing in front of us, the widower, he had a business in past life. He had a partner in that past life. They worked together for a while, and then the partner cheated our guy and stole from him a lot of money. When he realized that, they went to court, and the partner, the thief, not just did not admit and gave back the money, he took him through hell for 9 months. You know, some people, when you go to a court, that could be like torture. You don't have to go to hell. It's like, this is a hell on earth. So after they both died, the story came back to heavenly court, and it was decided that the one who cheated, stole the money, and tortured his partner will come back to compensate his partner in order to complete his tikkun. So he came back as a beautiful lady, rich. So the dowry money and all the money the father-in-law gave to the groom, that is the money that the bride owes from a past life. For 9 months of beautiful, beautiful life, very happy life, basically the bride was compensating her partner from past life for all the trouble he did, the bride, the man and the bride, for him, and now they're both even. So he says to the father-in-law, you want your daughter to continue on, basically leave him with the money and the house you bought for him. It belongs to him, and let's go on with our lives. So that's one story about Rabbi Zakluria, but fixing things the way it should be. Hasidic stories. Another genre of that is Hasidic. There are many, many, many books of Hasidic stories of different great Hasidic leaders solving problems by understanding the reincarnation behind it. One of the most famous is the story of the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement. Basically, the Hasidic movement was based on the Zohar and the teachings of the Arizal. And that story is about the Maggid of Mezrich. He was a great Kabbalist, and he became the one who continued the message of the Baal Shem Tov. But he was a great Kabbalist before they met even, but it was not as vivid as the Baal Shem Tov. So one day he says to the Baal Shem Tov, and he says, everything is, I'm getting it so well, but the reincarnation story, I don't get it. So the story said that the Baal Shem Tov took his student to the forest. There was a path in the forest. He said to him, sit under the tree, watch around, see what's going on, and after a few hours come back to me. Tell me what you've seen. So he's coming back puzzled, and he's saying, I'm sitting under the tree and I see somebody coming from a very far journey. It looks like it. He sat under a tree in front of me and he was resting. He ate something and he left a little package behind him, and he thought this is garbage. So I didn't think about it too much. And the man got up and walked away. Very shortly after, another person came from also a long journey, and he was tired, and he sat under the same tree the previous one was sitting. And then he sees the package. He opens the package and it's full of a lot of money, and he's very excited. So he's leaving with the money, and it looks like the person had was very happy. Not long after, very shortly after, another person passing by, sitting under the same tree as the same tree the other two was sitting under. And suddenly, number one, the first person, is coming running, where's my money? Of course, number three has no idea what money he's talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. So number one is screaming and yelling, this is the money I saved all my life for my dream. I went to do this dream business I was planning for years. And now it's gone, it's your fault. And he beats the daylight out of number three, till number three finally runs away for his life. I don't get it. So the Baal Shem Tov says, of course, in this life, there's no explanation. Those three lived in the same town in their past life. Number one and number two were partners in the same business for many, many years. After many, many years, one day, number two's wife is saying, the partner's wife is saying to her husband, look, aren't we 50-50 with your partner? He says, yes. How come they live in such a luxurious house? His wife has diamond rings and nice dresses, and we are poor like we've been in the beginning. You know, my husband, tomorrow, when everybody goes home, you stay in the business. You lock the doors and you go through the books. I'm sure they're cheating us. So he goes through the books and he realizes that he's being cheated for so many years. And all the profits went to his partner. He goes to his partner, how could you do that? So you don't deserve the money. So by giving back the money, no, I'm not giving you that back. So he took him to court. Number one was rich enough to bribe the judge, whose verdict was in favor of number one. So number one dies rich. Number two dies disappointed and poor. So they have to come back. Number one has to make a lot of money for a business deal. That's what he believes in. Basically, he makes the money that he owes and he leaves it under the tree. Number two passes by, and it looks like by coincidence, no, it was planned that he will sit under the tree, find the money that he deserves from his partner for past life, and he goes happily because that story is done. So the student is asking, what about number three? Why is it his fault? It says number three was the judge. So that's an example of Hasidic stories that you can buy, I think, books in English of Hasidic stories with stories like this. Not just among the Hasidic, you can find stories like this, but you can find stories like this, many stories like this, stories of righteous great rabbis in the Sephardic tradition. There are many stories that you can find. We'll talk about it later on. There are even Holocaust stories. We'll come into them later on. And there are recent stories that will come to them later on. The stories continue. So in the Jewish culture, there are many, many, many stories about reincarnation. We'll use them once in a while, but this is a very deep culture, although many, many Jews, especially in the West, that are not aware of that aspect. So So when we are talking about the sources for our course, as we said, Parashat Mishpatim in the Zohar is one major source for our study. Another one is the writings of Rabbi Isaac Luria, the Ari. One of them is called The Gate of Reincarnation. It's a whole book dedicated just to explain all the rules, the sophisticated rules of reincarnation. And it starts with, after the death of a person, he is repaid for his sins. And almost no one is exempt of that, which means no exemption, but very few people just simply do it once completely and don't have to incarnate again. You can find it in The Gate of Reincarnation, preface 22, page 59. So the question is, why don't we remember our previous life? Why do you need to remember our previous lives? Which means in this course, we are going to work on learning how to get there, to that place. But first of all, why don't we remember our previous life? And the answer is, today, you know, from modern psychology, that a lot of people going through therapy, as they go through all kinds of phobias and traumas, they start to remember a case of abuse they experienced when they were young. And because it was such a shock, they suppressed the memories. And only going through therapy, the memories started to come back. Which means human beings, in order to protect themselves from pain, we have that tendency to suppress memories that are very painful in order to be able to survive. It's a survival mechanism. What is the last event in our past life? Death. This is traumatic enough to prevent us from remembering that, because as the Ramak, Rabbi Moses Cordovero, he was a teacher of Rabbi Isaac Luria. He was the head of the Kabbalists of Tzfat till he passed away, and then Rabbi Isaac Luria took his place. And he said, maybe as a joke, if we remembered our past lives, we will not have time to live. We'll be just simply spend our lives trying to get even with whoever did not behave nicely to us in past lives. So this is a protection mechanism. So if we don't remember our past life, it's because we don't need to. However, as we work on ourselves, like spiritual therapy, and first of all, we start to do it on our own, expanding our consciousness, learning how to deal with our pains and sorrows, and transform them, then little by little, we will start remembering. It's a process. It's not something that for sure will happen at the end of this course, but we will learn the tools how to do it. Why do we need to remember our previous lives? So Rabbi Isaac Luria is saying we need to know reincarnation. There's no need to know exactly who was I, what was my name, but the idea that I realize that it's not my first time, and therefore, if somebody steals from me money and the judge gives a verdict to leave the money with that person, there's so many lives before this life. And if you have that dimension that you are not the first time over here, there are debts to repay, and there are achievements to gain, and it's much easier to experience life when you realize that nothing happens without a reason. And that's one of the major things we're going to do during this course, by expanding that idea, which means it will make it much easier for us to deal with hardships, with why, with all of those issues, that instead of making us sour, they can give us tools to move forward and grow. So, yes. Katya, you want to ask something?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes.
Like you are talking a lot about punishment, and one of the reasons that we reincarnate is because we have to correct things and put it even. But isn't the tikkun just about learning and getting better and enlightenment? Why do we have to be punished?
Because you have to understand that the way when the Kabbalists and when the Torah is talking about punishment, it's not the medieval way of looking at punishment. It's about basically cause and effect, which means you put your finger in the socket, the electrocution that you feel, that's punishment. What does it mean? It helps you to not to do it again. It's not that somebody's, oh, I'm going to smite you because I don't like you. It's a cause and effect. They don't see it as punishment the way we perceive punishment. The way we perceive punishment is a leftover from the Dark Ages, in which people believed in a God that is like an old angry man that is just waiting for you to make a mistake so he can smite you and take your revenge in you. And that's how people till now see punishment. Now we're talking about punishment is a correction, which means it's an experience in which you basically repair something that you hurt in yourself. So it's not that, again, when I hurt somebody else, it's not just I just hurt that person, I hurt myself. Now, so when I'm being judged, it's not when I'm being judged about why did you hurt him. If his place was to get hurt, somebody else will hurt him. Okay? The question is, why did you hurt him? Why were you chosen to be the vehicle for somebody else's pain? It's because there's something of pain that is incorrect inside you. So by correcting it, by going through the pain and overcoming the pain, as we're going to learn in the next classes, that's called correction. So correction is not just achieving enlightenment. Many times you can achieve enlightenment only by the way you deal with pain that you are still holding on to for who knows how many lifetimes. Okay? That's the way to look at the punishment. The punishment is it's a correction process. So that's why I said, why do we need to learn about reincarnation? Is so when we are going through something that looks like a punishment, instead of like, God, why are you doing it to me? It's like, I'm going through a correction right now. It's a healing crisis. It's an opportunity. It's a challenge. It's a way to reveal. We're going to have a whole class just about that. How do you deal with pain and misery and death from a reincarnation point of view? That it's not a punishment, it is an opportunity to elevate.
Thank you.
Okay. So
I have a question related to that.
Yes.
I put in the chat, well, I mean, what about like seriously evil people, like serial killers who murder children? And
we're going to learn about it too.
Yeah, I mean, don't they deserve to be punished? I mean, I know some of us are like, well, we're a good person, why should I be punished? But like, aren't there people that...
Yeah, again, the whole thing in punishment is not revenge. It's about correction. So serial killers, the Arizal is teaching us that it's written in Proverbs that serial killers, there's a verse saying, when a stone is screaming from the wall, and Rabbi Zakor is explaining, serial killers usually incarnate into stones for centuries till that desire to murder is quiet down. So that's why when you want to say about something that is so useless, in pain, the pain of being useless is like a stone that nobody turns it up. Nobody turns it, which means what a punishment. Like Balaam, he was basically trying to create a genocide, to kill the whole Israelite nation. And he incarnated for a few centuries into a stone. That's another story, we'll talk about it I'll tell the story later on, which from the Zohar and Rabbi Zakluria. I hope this is clear.
Thank you.
Okay. So to conclude, yeah.
Just a quick question. You covered Exodus 21. The Hebrew slave shall work for 6 years. What happens on the 7th year? And how does that affect the soul in that? I'm assuming that was referring to a soul.
Yeah. So it says, like, it was like kind of literally speaking, that the human being comes to 70 years. So he's a slave to the body, he's a slave to his duties and so on, to the physical one you have, and your work is to achieve tikkun. And why 7 years? That is basically including the 70 years of people on earth. So that was like kind of a parable. That's what the Zohar was saying. So you're not talking about 7 years, you're talking about 70 years of the average life of a human being.
So does he spend that 7th year where the souls reside and start the cycle all over again?
If it needs to. But
okay.
So the slavery is basically when the soul is enslaved to the limitations of the physical body.
I understand. Thank you.
Okay, so that was the context.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we have to complete, so just let me do it shortly and we'll repeat it next week. During this course, you should have a diary. I recommend to have a real booklet that even today you can buy, or maybe you have already. You know, there's books that look like a nice book from the outside, but it's empty pages inside. Get yourself one like this, because it's a years of work that you're starting right now, and you start writing stuff along the course, and you're starting to fill it up, because the journey that we are learning to take this course is basically how do we create the profile of who we were in past lives, why did we come to this life, what is the journey of this life, and what are the goals and the tikkunim of this life. So we are collecting basically a lot of information till finally, slowly, we'll be able to connect the dots. Okay? So what do you write in this journey? So you leave one chapter for a very important thing, which is what's hard to fix in life, what's hard to deal with. That's what you've come for, which means the stuff that really scares me, that it's the hardest for me to deal with, the stuff that I'm trying to run away from, all of those encounters, situations that I'm really upset about, trying to refrain, running away from. This is what we're here for. How? We're going to have a whole class just about analyzing that, but the first thing, to start writing it down. Okay? Another chapter is collecting childhood memories, fears, unexplained fears that you're so afraid of it, but you talk to other people, they don't know what you're talking about. Dreams, repetitious dreams from childhood that are very, very powerful and vivid, and we still remember. And also dreams from later time. Sometimes we have a very powerful dream, and we wake up and we feel that dream is very meaningful. Write it down. We will see there are certain things that repeat themselves in the dreams, and that will give us a lot of hints. All kinds of loves, preparations, like some people they love nature, they love hiking. Some people hate hiking, but they love going to the mall. It's like all of these things that are unique to yourself, and since childhood, and you don't know why you have a fetish for certain clothing, for certain styles. And that's expanded in the next one, special inclination towards literature, design, films from earlier periods. Some people are really everything from the time of the Victorian age is like furniture, clothing, movies, books. They have to. Some people that are totally indifferent to that, but they are very much into anything that connects to prehistoric stories, evidences, anything like this, or at the time of the Roman Empire or Chinese, whatever. If you have inclination from early age towards these eras, there's something in it. I had two close friends when I was much younger, who were like, I'm talking about in their early lives, they had this thing for Spain. They grew up in Israel. They had nothing to do with Spain family-wise. Their families came from other places. But they had this like really crazy thing, and when after they finished the army, they just took a plane. Each one is a different story. Went to Spain, and as they landed in Spain, they felt at home. And one of them even came to one city, and it was so like home, she could swear she was here before. All the way that she's walking down the street, she comes to an intersection, and she knows, I'm turning right, and there's a tower with a clock in front of me, and that's the way it is. She was in shock. Now, things like this, they are simply memories from past lives. Another thing that we need to write down is repetitive patterns of relationships with spouses, colleagues, friends, family. Many times, if you write down all kinds of people that you had problem with, and then you just go and analyze the relationship, sometimes you see the same emotions repeating with different people, which means it's not few tikkunim, it's one tikkun that repeats itself with different people. In Hebrew, it's being said, "Ota geveret b'shinoi aderet." It's the same lady, but with different dresses. Okay, we're way past our time. We will continue to talk about this stuff next time. Okay, thank you very much. Start your journey, start your job. It's a work. Open your book, and we'll see you next time.
Shalom uvracha, Rabbi.
All the
Thank
best.
you.
Shalom uvracha.